let's jump into it. Todd, I'm going to let you kind of take the helm on SPCE here because I have admittedly not been following it. It's deep in a watch list of mine somewhere, but I'm not much of an expert, and I know you own it personally. So go
I
ahead.
do. I do own it. I've owned it for a while. And, it's really one of those it's one of those flyers, pun intended, right? It's one of these kind of stocks that it's very hard in certain industries. So you could look at space as being this massive potential market, but you can't even really define the market yet. You can make some assumptions. You could say, oh, well, there's space travel, and then there's space mining, and then there's who knows? I mean, there's just so many pieces of that just haven't been fleshed out yet. And there's really no winner yet because the industry is so nascent. So it's really one of those industries where you look at it and you say, I am going to put a lot of faith in the fact that this was, a Richard Branson, a company, a Virgin company, and the success held in the past originally, when I first got involved in it. And I'm going to recognize that this is one of the only ways that I can kind of pure play this space. SpaceX, which is Elon Musk, that's not, unless you're in the venture capital world, you're not going to be able to buy shares in that.
Right.
So it's one of those only ways that you can play that. And it's been volatile because there's a lot of people out there who are betting against it because this is not easy. You're trying to basically, make space travel as eventually as common as regular airline travel. And it's dangerous, it's risky. There's all sorts of liability associated. What happens if, the rockets crash? There's so many things that could go wrong.
Not to mention it's extremely expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it's impossible to value, but trying to apply any kind of valuation. I'm just going to share my screen too, so our viewers on YouTube, listeners, I'll walk you through it the best I can, as we always do every week. But I wanted to share with our viewers as well, just to see how crazy the ride has been, Joe, in Virgin Galactic. When we had the stock just take off in January, $22, $23 at the end of December, going as high as $63, Joe. And I will say, one of my sayings is sell the vertical.
That's right.
I absolutely sold the vertical. I kept, a core exposure to it, but yeah, I reined in my exposure. And then I bought it back too early, Joe, because you can see we peaked out at 63, right along with regular technology stocks peaking out in February. And you can see that the Virgin Galactic's actually been in drawdown, and still actually, even with a 32% move up today, we'll get to that in a second, is still in drawdown from its peak in February. I did buy it back a little too early. I bought it back somewhere in that March time period when it was falling back to the 200-day moving average, and ended up sitting on a loser going all the way down to 14. Now, we've talked in the past, yes, I use charts to help inform my buying and selling decisions. But in a company like this, where I'm really I'm making a bet on something that's so far out into the future, I'm not going to let technicals are not really going to have much of an impact on me. I'm not going to sell it just because it's below the 200-day moving average, I should say. Okay, so this is one of those forever kind of mindset stocks for me, where I'm just going to let it run. Whatever happens, happens with it. So I looked stupid for a little bit, but I was still up overall because I think my original cost, Joe, was around $10, $10 or $11 was my first buy in this. So I was still up overall. And then today, geez, and we've rallied off that low in May of 14. And then today got up to almost 40 yesterday. And now today trading at 53. And at one point was up over $14 today, which is now, I think my average cost overall is now 14 because of additions.
Still pretty good.
I'm doing pretty well with it.
Yeah. So I have two follow-up questions. First follow-up question is this just, is there any particular cause behind this massive move, or is it just noise and Reddit doing its thing?
Well, FAA came out and apparently granted it a license to do commercial space flight. And, I think the reporting I saw is the first company to receive that quote unquote blessing. So I think that people just are looking at that as being one check mark in a box that's necessary for the company to continue to move in the direction it's hoping to move to. Is this an overreaction? I mean, up 30% in a day. I mean, it's probably a little forced short covering. A lot of people betting against the stock, probably a lot of people, trying to flatten out their positions and their exposure because something indeed did get check marked off the list that sounds encouraging for the future. So that's the news, Joe. That's the news, that the FAA is granted this license, and theoretically that's putting it one step closer to ultimately being able to put people on a plane that goes up high into the sky, gives people a little feeling
to the moon, some might say.
Maybe someday. And then, advancing that whole concept of space tourism.
Yeah. So last follow-up question. Are you selling this vertical?
No, not today. No. And the reason I'm not, let me go back to my chart again. I stopped sharing it. Of course.
Gee, I thought this was going to be a really simple yes, but now I'm intrigued.
No, here's the thing. I sell verticals when they're breaking out, when they're all-time high verticals is really where I get really, I'm going to sell it. So when you're making an all-time high vertical, then, this kind of chart where here's the old prior cup, the beginning of the cup was 36, right? So then you clear the cup and then you go boom, 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 3 days. And I think it's, was it Marty Schwartz who said 3 days is usually that's you want to start pulling some in there. I think that was him. But anyways, so we got boom, 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 3, sell on that gap up. So if you look at this is where, I mean, you could argue that this is one massive cup going all the way to 63.
Right.
Now there's a gap here that theoretically at some point could get filled, right? So that's a risk that I'm taking. And yeah, we're up 33%. So tomorrow, hey, you could get back 10% and that would still be fine because it's really only a third of the move up, right? I'm fully willing to just sit and let that go. If this was a 1, 2, 3 move and we were way above 60 here, so maybe 70 or towards 80, then yeah, Joe, I would sell that. But a one-day spike like this with this kind of a setup, I'm leaning towards just letting it do whatever it's going to do.
All right. Interesting. That's good info.